What's up, everybody? Happy Friday to you. It is Anthony Cosenza and John Sharon with the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you. Special day, special time. I guess, I don't know, special day is actually accurate these past couple of months, past couple of weeks, but got a lot to talk about. We were supposed to go on, I don't know, about 3 hours ago, but didn't happen. But we're making it. We're making a change. We're on now. John, happy Friday to you. Thank you for hanging strong, my friend, and dealing with my chaotic life. But how you doing, man?
Any day on here, talking with you, talking to the fans that get to listen to us begrudgingly every single week. It's a special day for me. Last day of May, 1 month closer to the months that we're all kind of looking for. So, yeah, special to me, man.
I am. This is just going right into how this day has gone. I'm having a little trouble hearing John, but good to be with you, and good to be talking some Cincinnati Bengals football. We made a little bit of a mistake, so to speak, last week, in that I think we said something to the effect of we said last week they were doing OTAs. It was kind of more spring workouts. The official OTAs this week commenced first, kind of a little bit more intensive on-field workouts and things of that nature. We saw more, I don't know if we want to call them first looks from Joe Burrow, but we saw more of Joe Burrow, and some surprises, some predictable absences, and some things to start talking about as somewhat real football is just a couple of months away here.
Yeah, OTAs are really the first chance for players to kind of go up against one another, not like in an official press, man-to-man, one-on-one pass rushing sense, but it's a good chance for both the offense and defense to kind of line up against one another for the first time. Teams get 10 of these sessions, just light practices. Again, no contact, no tackling or anything of that sort. So it really was the first chance for, both units to kind of go up against one another. It's been a bunch of conditioning. It's been a bunch of individual type workouts and whatnot leading up to this point, which kind of seems where at least the Players Association wants this time of year to be trending towards. So I don't know if this is like the final days of the OTAs that we kind of know it to be, but this is the time of year where we first start to see, okay, what do the starting units kind of look like? Is there anything type of insight that we can kind of garner from that? Because, all the rosters are full nowadays. You're not really going to see any new additions here until maybe like the waiver wire kind of comes about. But this is the first chance for, the coaching staff to really implement the types of units that they want to see in training camp. You're going to have guys rotate in and out. And again, it's no longer kind of going up against air, if you will. There is at least an offense and a defense kind of working together, albeit in very limited fashion.
Limited, yes. And that is, unfortunately, I mean, it's kind of, this is the season of the tease, right? You start to get, glimpses of players, and you get your first, on-field shots of the new guys and that sort of thing. But some surprises, some lineup surprises, again, like very, very early on here, some lineup surprises and some surprises as it goes with, maybe not surprises, but some absences, right? And I guess we could let's get the bad news out of the way first. We talked about Trey Hendrickson returning to workouts and that sort of thing, but Bengals a little thin at wideout right now. We know the situation with T. Higgins, and now Jamar Chase kind of, staying away, doing his own thing, and protecting himself. Obviously looking for a new contract himself, but two of the more notable absences, and, they're called organized team activities and, voluntary workouts and all that kind of stuff. But it always goes without saying that the expectation is, whether it's fair or not, 100% participation or 100% attendance. So that being said, John, some notable absences, although somewhat predictable.
Yeah, I mean, the most predictable one was obviously, like you said, T. Higgins, who is very known at this point to try to squeeze out the remaining leverage that he can against the Bengals by just not participating, show up. He can't even show up to the Bengals practice without even signing his franchise tender, and both sides have until, I guess, July 15th to get a deal done, even though no one expects that to be the case. So we can all, again, kind of predict how this is going to go is very similar, not the exact same as what happened with Jesse Bates. So he's on his own type of thing. As far as Jamar Chase, Trent Brown, Sheldon Rankins go, all three, I guess two of them are like true veterans. Jamar Chase is not quite yet technically a veteran in the NFL sense because he hasn't accrued enough seasons. But, at least Brown and Sheldon Rankins, they're both over the age of 30. They're on their own type of workout conditioning schedules. They're getting in work in right now. I believe Zach Taylor mentioned to reporters that they obviously have the playbook. Like, they're not like completely just away, not doing any type of work relative to the team. They're just not with the team right now, and they will rejoin the team once mandatory minicamp shows up, because if they don't, there's implications with that. But obviously, money, contractual things, that's not a thing with them because they literally just signed contracts back in March. And the same kind of goes for Jamar Chase. He has been working out, I believe, in the Dallas-Frisco area in Texas, doing his own type of regimen. And I don't believe this is the first time that he has been away from the team during the at least voluntary portion of the offseason. So I don't think this is anything necessarily new. Unfortunately, though, the way that it was phrased by ESPN's Adam Schefter was he kind of grouped Jamar Chase and T. Higgins together as joint absences, as they're both, eligible for new contracts and whatnot. But I think anyone who has followed the Bengals and that knows the situation with T. Higgins can say that both those situations are entirely different. And no one is expecting Jamar Chase to even hold out, because he can't even hold out, Anthony, because he hasn't accrued enough seasons to enter free agency. So him missing training camp and sacrificing an accrued season, that would definitely go against his best interest. So I think this is obviously just Jamar Chase being on his own schedule, getting his own work in, and he will rejoin the team within due time for sure.
And it's also, it is about protecting not only, themselves in a contract type of situation, but of course, unfortunately, knock on wood, I don't even want to put it in the universe, freak things happen at these types of things. And maybe if they feel that they can kind of control the environment and the variables, so to speak, a little bit more, obviously in a very important off season and upcoming following year, maybe they feel that that's the safest route for them to prevent any kind of issue. And obviously, going with the thinking that T. Higgins, despite the trade demands and all that kind of stuff, going with the line of thinking that T. Higgins will be here this year and Jamar Chase will be here, this year, obviously, it's going down that way. We've seen, obviously, to the most important player on the roster, some springtime and summertime injury issues happen. So if that's what it takes to avoid some of that stuff, it's okay that they're not here, at least in my book. Right here, I see, 'tis the season to take attendance at voluntary workouts. T. Martin says there.
I think we had Anthony lag out of here, but yeah, it is the season to take attendance at voluntary workouts, because that's all we care about, right? It's just like these are very rudimentary workouts and practice sessions that these players are going under, and obviously the Bengals aren't the only team to have players who are absent right now. There's just other players who aren't getting maybe as much attention. You have the Justin Jeffersons of the world. You have the Micah Parsons of the world who aren't showing up to, again, protect themselves and really going on their own schedule. And if something happens, they're not going to happen on company time. But yeah, it really is just that time of year where any type of minor news just becomes major news.
Yeah. Good recovery there, John. I hit the back button there and it kicked me out of the studio. So, hey, even though we've done this for years and years and years, one slip of the finger and there is, there's chaos. But hey, Nice recovery. I love it. Look, we knew some of this stuff was going to happen. We knew that some others weren't. Some of the stuff that wasn't expected, I guess, in a way, there was the veteran safety Von Bell lining up as a starting player above Jordan Battle. And Jordan Battle obviously proved himself pretty nicely, especially towards the end of last season. And so, look, we know all those guys are going to see the field in certain packages and different things. And Jordan Battle is the future, it would appear, at the strong safety, a more in the box safety type of position going forward for the Bengals. But are you a little bit surprised that they went with the veteran Bell as kind of the quote unquote starter at this point, because he's been away from the team for a little bit, and or what Battle showed last year?
I'm not too surprised. I kind of figured them bringing back Bell in such a haste when he was available, it did kind of signal that they had a plan to at least play him, early and often. It was notable the fact that Bell was the first guy out there to take starting reps. This is when media members had access to see what was going on the field. It's come to my attention that Battle has also gotten reps next to Geno Stone as a starter at safety. So it does seem like right now they're kind of feeling each other out, giving both guys exposure in that role. And it's probably a little too early for anyone to really say like who's ahead in that battle, who's got the upper hand in being the full-time starter, even if there is a full-time starter at that position. Because this time last year we were talking about, is there a potential for a 3 safety rotation, when at the time it was Dax Hill, Nick Scott occupying the 2 other safety spots. I think we can all agree that Geno Stone is locked in there for 1,000+ snaps as a starter, but there could be a situation where Von Bell knows the scheme better than any other safety on this team because he was under it for 3 years with Luna Rumo, proven commodity within this scheme, within this defense, and with the defensive coordinator. So it makes sense to get him out there first, just as someone who knows where to be. He can communicate well, even if he's not the the elite athlete or as young as some of the other options. And then you allow Jordan Battle to continue developing alongside with him, allowing him to get some reps where Bell is there. Like, you don't have to worry about him. So when you go through all these practice reps and you're installing everything and you're seeing what your entire defense kind of has to bring to the table, you at least have someone that you can rely on to take those snaps and to be in position. And it's just important, I think, that you still continue to give Battle some reps, because there's a very good chance, in my opinion, that he becomes the best option to start by the time the regular season begins. And by that time, you don't want him to just watch on the sidelines and just practice with the second team at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I think also, in a way, whether it's fair or not, the lack of veteran, leadership presence, everything that was lacking at that position last year, even if Battle is the future and even if the upside right now is higher with Battle, I think just to settle things down from the big plays that were allowed and get everybody integrated, get a little bit more of the, hey, let's dip our toes in the water instead of head first into the shallow end type of thing. I think that this allows you a little bit more of a easier on ramp right into the season. I think Bell's going to have a prominent role. I think Battle's going to have a prominent role. Stone's they're going to do some different things with all of those players in there for sure. But I think just for the sake, and I hesitate to say this because it sounds so much like the later annoying years of the Marvin Lewis era, where it's like, man, veteran preferential, even though the exciting rookies are there, that sort of thing. I think right now it makes a little bit more sense just for the sake of, all right, let's make sure that we got a little bit of leadership, a little bit of experience, and eliminate some of the many issues that plagued this team last year.
Yeah, I mean, even if Geno Stone is like locked in as a starter, you want someone who knows what they're doing and is familiar with the scheme and the nomenclature and everything to play alongside with him. And I think that's Von Bell's role too, to make sure that Geno Stone is kind of up to speed with everything, because they're counting on him to obviously play significant snaps and to be the exact piece that they didn't have last year. So it's very early days in the whole process. It was just interesting, I guess, to see who was out there first, because that was going to be a question that maybe we wouldn't have known until training camp, until we did see it in OTAs. But again, obviously with it being this time of year, It's just a matter of, okay, who's out there, who's able to practice. And yeah, it makes sense why Von Bell's out there. Obviously, with Trent Brown not being present at voluntary workouts and OTAs, it continues to be Amarius Mims who is taking the starting reps at right tackle, as was the case with offseason workouts. And we saw a lot of clips about, Frank Pollock, the offensive line coach, kind of working one-on-one with him getting a lot of attention, him working alongside Orlando Brown paying a lot of attention to him, kind of taking him under his wing. And Anthony, I think this is also something interesting to kind of monitor for the rest of the offseason, because it was very assumed, I think, that when Trent Brown signed and they hadn't drafted the tackle, obviously, that, yeah, he's like pencil him in as the week 1 starter. He's the veteran. He's arguably the most proven offensive lineman outside of, I guess, Orlando Brown and maybe Ted Karras. But the track record of high level play with him and for multiple different teams is very proven. They signed him to, presumably start or at the very least be that swing tackle. And when they drafted Amarius Mims, it was all, yeah, like this guy, it probably isn't ready to start week 1 and whatnot. He needs reps and exposure as soon as possible. He needs as much seasoning before you give him legitimate NFL action. And with Trent Brown not being there right now, and again, this is just temporary, like we can assume that Brown will show up for mandatory minicamp and whatnot. I think it is a positive that he's getting exposure and experience with the rest of the offensive linemen, playing next to Alex Kappa, the right guard, and just getting familiar with the scheme, because the quicker that he kind of adapts to all that and gets gets in sync with the rest of the offensive linemen, that's when the athletic ability and the high end upside that gets unlocked as he gets more familiar. And him getting reps now, it may not indicate anything about what it'll be for week 1, but I think that's definitely a hidden positive with one of the veterans, Trent Brown, not being there for sure.
Part of the OTA process is, getting familiar with the formations, getting familiar with timing, especially with new players, getting familiar with for the linemen playing next to, guys that you will be playing next to, and getting used to the style of play, right? And how to make that a well-oiled machine up front in a lot of different ways. And part of it is we talked about the wide receivers. Burton is getting a lot of work right now, a lot of prominent work, because of Higgins and Chase being out of OTAs and the other spring workouts. You saw Burrow and Burton chatting after a couple of different practices or a couple of different drills, and Burrow kind of telling them, hey, run it this way. I kind of want you here. This is how I feel this route. This is how I feel these plays. That this also can be said with Mims and other veterans helping. Bell and Battle being out there, Bell being the example of, hey, this is the play. This is where you should be, etc. And then coach, being an on-field coach to some of these young players, these new players. And this could potentially be a very good, because Mims was viewed in a lot of ways as a bit of a project, whether you agree with that or not, or fair or not. It's more the limited snaps, limited games, that sort of thing. And so, again, it eases the ramp up into the season, whether or not he's going to be the week 1, week 5, or 2025 starter. It eases the ramp up for when he is doing that, even though this is light workout type of stuff. Getting those reps, being next to guys he will eventually play next to, getting that on-field coaching and advice from veterans, that's a big deal at this point in the NFL calendar. And we scoff at the shells, the helmets and shorts and all that kind of stuff, but that's a little bit more about what this is about: learning the playbook, learning the plays, the verbiage, all that sort of thing, and then getting some of that on-field mentoring from their teammates.
It also helps when you only have one option there at the moment with Mims, and I'm not a big fan of like rotating guys, specifically that offensive line, in and out at like a single position, because I do think that disrupts the chemistry and the cohesion with the overall offensive line. So just having Mims out there and him not going in and out, and maybe sometimes with the second team, sometimes with the first team, I think just that position group specifically, there's not a lot of positives with that. So just him being uninterrupted and getting those reps is of crucial importance. So I think that's definitely a hidden positive. You mentioned Burton working with the wide receivers, obviously with Chase and Higgins not there. And it's not even just him, right? Like, I think it was a couple practices after the media got a chance to see OTAs. It wasn't Burton working with the ones. It was Andre Yoshevich and Charlie Jones kind of getting those reps. So it's really just this total group behind Chase and Higgins who are getting a lot more exposure and chemistry and trust with Burrow, which is obviously of massive importance if they want to see targets during the season. And obviously with Yoshivas and Charlie Jones kind of on two different trajectories from that rookie season, both those guys getting reps is of paramount importance, and getting as much attention with fine tuning of how they need to, kind of fit in with their route concepts and whatnot. I think that's definitely important because, again, like when players miss OTAs, it's typically like the high profile players who you can count on Sundays, regardless of how much time they practice with the team. Once Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are back, they will fit in like a glove because the offense revolves around them. They know what they can do. Like they're not going to run routes and they're not going to call plays that they aren't comfortable with and that they can't succeed. It's really about the rest of the receiver group that needs to be fine-tuned as much as possible because of how young they are and because there's more athleticism for them to unlock it, so long as they're comfortable within the scheme and what they're asked to do. So them getting that exposure is a huge plus too, because you know for a fact that it doesn't matter how much practice Jamar Chase and Teagans get, once the games go on and they're healthy, like they'll be good to go.
Yeah, I've been talking on ramp. I mean, that's just a that's a down ramp for them when they get back. I mean, it's just boom, they hit the ground running type of thing. Yeah. So I mean, again, some notable yet predictable absences and some other just kind of interesting tidbits in terms of starting, and we want to talk about that just to kind of explain a little bit why that may or may not make sense. And we feel that there is quite a bit of logic in some of that, and really some of it's by necessity because of the notable absences, right? I mean, we talked about that. Our Mr. Generosity, of course, thank you for the YouTube super chat, and of course, we like to highlight as many comments as possible in our live chats. But if you have a question or a comment that you really want to have answered by the two wise ones you see before you, obviously, I'm being a little facetious, but if you want a comment or a question to be answered, usually on air, super chats are the best way to do it because we are greedy people. I say that a little tongue in cheek too, because usually we highlight a nonprofit, and a lot of those super chats go to that when we do. So at any rate, Mr. Whisper, this is kind of a tricky question. It's hard to kind of answer off the cuff a little bit. Gentlemen, what are your predictions for the total snap count of the rookies in the 2024 season? I'm going to start with Burton because he seems to kind of have the path of getting on the field the most and or the earliest in a lot of different ways. As I look at the top three snap counts for the Bengals wide receivers last year, I see 890 for Chase, 573 for Higgins, and 429 for Irwin. So, when you look at that, is the Irwin number the threshold a little bit? The Higgins number is a little thrown because he missed some time and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Is that where we expect Burton to be about, or does he kind of cut into that as well as a little bit into Yoshi's and a little bit? I mean, I could see that. I think it also is, hey, how fast does he hit the ground running, and how much does he show early enough? He's older, right? He's been around and played a lot of college football for a lot of different teams, so he may have an easier path and ready to be on there, ready to get on the field early and often. So that's kind of a threshold number potentially to look at, that Irwin number.
Yeah, and I think even if the Bengals continue to just be an 11 personnel based offense, which most of the offenses are, but they were like truly pioneers with that, and that's the majority of their offense. Even if that's still the case, I still kind of go back to this phrase. Like, I don't think he's a 1-for-1 Tyler Boyd replacement where he's just going to take all the slot snaps and play, 90-95% of the game. I think he will probably be rotated in and out, probably more often than Tyler Boyd ever was. And you will see Yoshivas and Trent and Irwin get those snaps. So I'd say a good over-under for him is probably around 600, where maybe by the season's end, he's more reliable, he's more counted on, and he doesn't exit the game more often because he's valuable with that skill set. But no, I think 600 is probably a good barometer for him for sure.
That's a good threshold, because an additional question that was asked was, what was Tyler Boyd's snap count last year? 824. So, when I bring up Irwin, That's one number. And then, of course, the Boyd number and that 600 kind of rests right in the middle there. And with the Bengals, preference this year to be able to kind of shell game their wide receivers, right? Mix them around. Burton's going to be inside in the slot to kind of stretch the slot a little bit. You can kick him outside, bring Higgins back inside, that sort of thing. You'll get Irwin still in the mix, save for something a little bit unexpected there. And then, I maybe the dip in snaps is for Charlie Jones at wide receiver, and he's primarily your special teams guy. And then you rely a little bit more on Yoshi, particularly in the red zone, because he showed to have great prowess in the red zone last year. Maybe that's where things end up. So I think 550, 600 is probably a good threshold for Burton. What about a couple we don't have to go through every single one of them. Sorry, Mr. Whisper. We try and cater to the super chat, but let's talk about a couple more. I mean, Mims, that's the hard one, right? How healthy is Trent Brown going to be this year? Is Mims going to happen to show enough in the spring and summer to be like, wow, he's going to supplant? I don't see that happening. I think they're going to go with the veteran early. So I don't see a lot for Mims unless there's a really kind of standard Trent Brown type of he's going to miss 3-4 games, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to predict injuries. I think the safe assumption is Trent Brown misses a handful of games, and that's where I'll put Mims at like 350, 400, because I think he will see the field as like an extra blocker when they go kind of those jumbo sets. I mean, the path is just easy as hell because he's a mammoth, and he can definitely generate some movement on the goal line and whatnot. But yeah, I think he will end up seeing time as a starter, whether it be Trent Brown is injured or Orlando Brown is injured, because that's so rare, but he can never count it out. So I think he'll start a handful of games and then he'll see the field here and there and very specific situations. So 350 sounds about right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. How fun would it be though if you saw Mims line up in the old Pico fullback? Goal line fullback. We talked about the Dennis Nolan.
He can move to do it too. So
yeah. You got boulder shoulders. Zach Moss back there, and then of course you got Mims blocking for him. That'd be fun stuff. But I see the threshold pretty low for him. I don't know. I think the next guy. Let's just kind of talk about all the top three picks for the Bengals. I think Jenkins probably has the highest chance to see the most snaps, probably of those three. Burton makes a case for it, just because of the necessity of the Bengals needing some help in the interior. You see here, I can pull up the snap counts for some of these guys, but I don't know. I see him kind of having probably the biggest chance of having the highest snap count of those first three, or seeing the field very, very early over at least Mims and maybe even more so a little bit Burton.
Yeah, I mean, it helps with the position that he plays. He's going to be relied on to just kind of rotate in and out. I think the best spot to look at is try to see what 2021 can provide as a reference, because that's when you had a healthy and competent 3 defensive tackle rotation. That was interesting. I'm looking at it right now. But all 3 of DJ Reader, Larry Ogunjobi, and BJ Hill played at least 720 snaps. And it was Reader leading the way with 777, Ogunjobi with 752, and BJ Hill with 720. I don't think that's. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because we don't know specifically what they're going to do at nose tackle, because McKinley Jackson is such a different player with a different skill set than Reader. So we don't know how they're going to manage that position, that there's going to be more of a equitable rotation at that spot. I would assume that obviously Rankins and BJ Hill lead the way with snaps there, and maybe they play a combined 1,500. And I don't know. I puts Jenkins, I think, probably baseline 500, right? Like at the minimum, just because he's clearly the 3rd best defensive tackle on the team immediately, even as a rookie. So I could see him approaching 700. That might be a little bit too much for a rookie defensive lineman, particularly because that position is tough for rookies to play. even if Jenkins, is really experienced and obviously has the athleticism to do so. So anything between 500 and 700 wouldn't surprise me. So yeah, around like 600, which is I guess what we said for Burden as well.
You, sir, are a wise man. Would you like to take a guess without looking at BJ Hill and Zachary Carter's snap counts from last year?
Were they in the 600s as well?
Zachary Carter was 500 on the nose. So when you said 500, that makes a lot of sense. And the snap share of that was just a tick under 46%. And BJ Hill was 778. So again, I think that, BJ Hill, if you may want to take a little bit of a slice off of that a little bit, just because he's had a high volume of snaps since being here. If you can get him to that 650-ish 700 range instead of the high 700s pushing 8, if you can get him there, you get Jenkins that 500, 550, maybe 600 type of snaps. And then, you get McKinley Jackson working in there. I think you can kind of create a nice rotation again in a lot of different respects. But that's a good snap placement there. So good question, Mr. Whisper. Made us kind of think on our toes here, and appreciate you always being so generous to us. And if anyone is so inclined, we will do that. We used to spend a lot of Fridays, and we're going to start kicking that off again, I think. Spend a lot of Fridays doing listener questions. And so I do want to bring this one back up from Brandon before we talk about our potential breakout players. Good evening, gents. With the additions from free agency and the draft, have we finally figured out how to protect Joe and posture ourselves to be an elite Super Bowl contender over the years? It seems we have accepted, quote, risk in the trenches, and it results in heartbreak. I saw an interesting, I believe it was, I don't want to misquote it, I believe it was Warren Sharp, who provides a lot of great analysis out there. Pass block win rate for the Bengals, really since Joe Burrow was the starter, I think, where it was the reference point. It has never been, pass block win rate has never been higher than 27th in the league. And that includes Orlando Brown being here last year. So you would hope that Trent Brown, yes, another year of Orlando Brown, tweaking the system, healthy Joe Burrow, et cetera, that starts to tick that number up. Mims and for the future, or maybe for this year, that's where you hope that level needs to tick up. I dare to say that the Bengals in that statistic, that specific metric, you got to be top half of the league. I mean, you got to be league average at least, I think, in order to have a solid chance and keep your quarterback healthy. Obviously you want to be top 10, you want to be towards the top, all that sort of thing. But again, I think if this offensive line and a lot of major statistical categories in these specific metrics that point to success or failure, I think if you're kind of at this point, if you're trending league average as a whole from this group, that's a big leap in a lot of different respects than what we've seen over the past handful of years from this group and all of the big investments they've made up front.
Yeah, it's a tough layered question because I think a combination of the personnel that they've had and the type of offense that they run has led to that specific metric looking very bad relative to other teams. And there was no personnel changes on the offensive line after the Bengals went from Joe Burrow to Jake Browning, and yet the offensive line performed significantly better because the scheme around the passing game changed dramatically, and it was more obviously quarterback friendly with going under center and play action and screens and all the things that I think fans have wanted a greater implementation, relative to like what the 49ers do and stuff like that. And you never want the offense to be completely like that because you don't want to just limit what Joe Burrow can do, and that will always be part of the offense. But there still needs to be that gradual shift from just straight drop back situations 40, 50 times a game. It does favors to no offensive lineman up front, no matter how talented that they are. And even still, like the biggest change obviously is going from Jonah Williams to Trent Brown and potentially Amarius Mims later in the season. There isn't that much of a personnel change if you want to continue with the same type of Joe Burrow offense. And again, I feel like we talk about this every single week, but just the changes that they're trying to implement by going more under center, by utilizing more play action with Burrow, it definitely will help the production of the offensive line. The offensive line isn't changing personnel-wise. These guys aren't getting more athletic. In fact, for as much as we talk about the potential growth of guys like Cordovals and the upside of Amarius Mims, the other guys are not, they're not spring chickens anymore, right? Orlando Brown's 28, 29 years old. Ted Karras is the oldest player on the team, 31. Alex Kappa is approaching 30. There's a legitimate argument to be had that the peaks of these players have potentially already been reached, and they have to monitor, their continual just progression or potentially decline in ability, and making their jobs easier with making the whole scheme more friendly and just not having, again, straight drop back 3-second dropbacks 50 times a game against elite pass rushers. It will make everything better. So I think it's not just the personnel additions and the attention that they've given. It's more along the lines of, where is the offense going? Is that going to help out the offensive line in general? And there's reason to believe that that's the case.
And that's why they've also leaned into Zach Moss, Chase Brown, running back by committee. So the predictability factor, I think, or lessening that, I think, plays into, a better offensive line performance going forward. So good questions. We usually do, we'll do a little bit more lengthy listener questions live. We like doing those. It's been a little while since we've done those, but we will get back to that. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe podcast network in the Believe in Cincy channel within the Believe network. So go find that, subscribe through your favorite audio streamer there, primarily iTunes, but we're in a lot of different places. You got to resubscribe. If you were passed on the Cincy Jungle channel, that feed has been cut, and we are now on a new feed on the Believe network. So you got to go get that and resubscribe, if you will. You'll get our show. You'll get 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin. You'll get Talking Football with Bengal Jim and friends. I think he's taking a little mini break right now, and he is gearing up for that Jungle Jam event coming up in July. So you're going to want to get some tickets and attend that in Cincinnati. A lot of former players and coaches. I think our Believe crew is going to be on hand there in some form or fashion to get the sights and sounds, speak to some folks, all that good stuff. And then, of course, Matt and Willie No Ball. That's the new title of the coach, Matt Minnick and Willie Lutz, breaking things down. So we've got a nice slate of shows, we think. Hopefully you enjoy them as well. Get them there. And, of course, if you like the video side of things, when I'm not swiping myself back and out of the picture, you can click the show icon underneath John. Click that to subscribe. There will be a subscribe button that pops up. Click that. And then, of course, the little bell, you got to click that so you know when we're going live, because sometimes we go impromptu and or later than we plan. So you got to get notified when we're doing that. And you saw some people on Facebook commenting. Give that a thumbs up. The Cincy Jungle Facebook page, we stream live there, as well as on a number of Twitter accounts. Whew. Okay. Shameless self-promotion done. Let's move on to the 2024 potential breakout candidates. This has been an annual tradition, unlike any other on this program. We've done this, God, I don't know, last 5 years, something like that. What we do is we kind of, and it's a ambiguous definition when we talk about breakout, right? It could be the guy who's played pretty well and ascends to stardom or Pro Bowl berth, that sort of thing. It could be someone who takes over a starting position from somebody else, maybe unexpectedly. It could be a role player that steps in and just heightens that role player, gets some more snaps, makes a bigger impact in an important area of the team as well. So it's a little ambiguous. John and I are going to provide one each. We'll get these a little bit better production quality as we go on here. Usually we do little videos and all kinds of different things. So we'll kind of get back to that in a little bit. But hey, it's our first one of the season. We're a little tired. It's Friday. I don't want to say lazy, but we've been a little tied up with some stuff. So we're gonna just do one each here, and we're gonna talk about it. John, I'm gonna allow you to go first. Age before beauty, my friend.
Okay, but I don't want what happened last week to happen again. So I'm gonna ask you: is your player on offense or defense? Because I have one for each.
Defense.
Yours is on defense. Okay, I'll go for my offense one. I think it's the very obvious.
Was that the one you were going to do?
Oh, I had both of them primed up. I'm ready to go for either of them. So
okay. All right.
We will go with the slightly
I
older.
appreciate you not stepping on the toes. I appreciate
No,
that.
I couldn't do that 2 weeks in a row. So we are going to go with the slightly older version of mine, Andre Yoshevich, man. Like it's just the obvious one for me on offense in terms of like a young player who's not a rookie. But ever since I think the end of the season, when Trenton Irwin was entering free agency and we didn't know for sure if he was coming back, my evaluation of him was like, yeah, this guy is the new Trenton Irwin. Maybe not someone that you can fully rely on to be a starter at any wide receiver position, but someone who can easily be wide receiver 4, play in certain down and distance situations, certainly play in the red zone. Like it's very rare for someone drafted as late as he was to get 4 touchdowns as a rookie, but the main thing that he has going for him, we kind of talked about it a little bit. We kind of touched on a little bit earlier in the show. It's trust. Like he already has a level of trust, I think, within the system with Burrow of the ball kind of finding his way and making critical catches. And obviously the most important part of the field, which is where the field is painted. So there were times last year where I think part of his route running was a little bit rough around the edges, which is expected considering where he came from. He never played Division I football. He came from the Ivy League, or never played like true high level college football. He came from the Ivy League, but a track athlete, so the athleticism speaks for itself, and an athlete that I think knew how to utilize his athleticism. He knew where to be. He knew how to kind of change gears a little bit, and I think manipulate cornerbacks a little bit. And obviously the size obviously speaks for itself too. He was 6'3", 6'3", 215 pounds, a wide catch radius. You can kind of box out cornerbacks. And that obviously bodes well with a quarterback like Joe Burrow, who loves to throw back shoulders. And we saw that as well. So it was definitely, for me, a better than expected rookie season for Yoshevich. And he got better as the year went on, which has always been my theme for kind of identifying breakout players. Like I believe my first one ever on the show was Sam Hubbard, which is just explains how old the show is, considering he's the last Marvin Lewis holdover still on this team. But
Look
Sam Hubbard also
Look
had that.
you.
He had that kind of late resurgence. I think it was like his first or second year before he really started to solidify himself as a critical member in the defense. And that was kind of what we saw from Andre Yoshevich. And right now it's just a matter of what his role is going to be and how much that he can continue to ascend, because obviously the drafting of Jermaine Burton kind of gives you a solid top 3 once Chase and Higgins kind of come back. And, Trenton Irwin's still around, and obviously they kept him around for a reason, but I see no reason why by the end of training camp, Andre Yoshevich isn't wide receiver 4. I think just the athletic upside, the catch radius, already the embedded trust that he has with Burrow, he can continue to build off of that with another good offseason, because last year he was one of the training camp stars, and that's why he got those opportunities early in the season. And it's why he ended up getting, end zone targets and taking advantage of them. So I think there's definitely room for him to continue to grow. And a lot of people were excited about him last year. I was more hesitant to really put that hype on him, because considering when he was drafted, who he was going up against in college. But it does seem like a lot of those athleticism traits are translating. And I think the more experience and the more, chemistry that he builds within the offense, it really does seem like he has an outside chance of potentially being a future starter. But just for being that wide receiver 4, which has been an important role for the team in the past couple of years, I could definitely see that for him for sure.
These are some of my favorite players on the roster, and especially since the Bengals have been so, for the historical struggles in a lot of different ways and that sort of thing, they have been largely very good at drafting wide receivers and drafting solid, if not star wide receivers outside of the first round and well outside of the first round. TJ Hushmanzada was a 7th round pick, right? So they know how to find these kind of diamonds in the rough, so to speak, or these underdog type of players. Some of them have been guys with some character stuff, like a Chris Henry that fell to them in the 3rd round. But these supplemental guys that end up kind of being almost fringe stars at some point in their career, like a Chris Henry. Kelly Washington before Chris Henry. Kelly Washington was a nice third, number 3, number 4 wide receiver. Remember Kevin Walter, another guy who was a nice contributor for this team that put up some big numbers as a supplemental guy. And I see just build wise from some of those players mentioned, the 6'2", 6'3", catch radius, some pretty good speed. I see some elements of some of those players mentioned, if not some many, many others that we can talk about with Yoshi in this offense. And I think, it's one of those guys, maybe it's a little bit of the Chris Evans effect, where maybe the receptions aren't super high, the yardage isn't super high, but the touchdowns per touch percentage is like skyrocket, right? It's skyrocketing. And I see that. And you mentioned, I didn't really think about this too much because we've been so fixated on the current starting wide receivers and other players. And maybe this is a guy being groomed for a T. Higgins type of role down the road. I mean, after T. Higgins, it seems like, assuming he plays this year, maybe the Bengals do another tag next year. I don't know that a long-term thing is going to happen, but maybe this is the guy they're trying to groom because he came from a small school. It's going to take a little while longer for a similar role to T. Higgins. I don't know, but I like him as a supplemental piece and a guy that could really help out this offense. And again, kind of play that shell game. Who are you going to cover? Where are you going to go? I mean, what are we going to do to you, defense? That sort of thing.
The comments are going to get me if I didn't say his name correctly. It's Yossi Vash, and I should have probably just confirmed that before.
Yossi Vash,
I've called him Yoshivis, but yeah, I agree. And I think still, though, like in terms of expectations, I think it'd be awesome if he ended up being a starter for them because that's obviously extremely valuable. But even if he doesn't, I still see him developing as a wide receiver 4 who plays throughout the game. I still see that as a major success as a 6th-round pick. And I feel like for the people who do see him as the eventual T. Higgins replacement, if the case becomes he just is that next Trent Irwin who sticks around with the team for years to come, I still feel like that's a fine pick for a 6th-rounder, even if he doesn't end up being the guy who gets 6-7 targets a game, plays 60 snaps a game. It's all relative, definitely based off of when you're drafted. And I think he has as good of a chance as any 6th-round pick in recent Bengals history to really outplay that draft stock for sure.
If you look at what the Bengals have done outside of the first, drafting receivers in general, Eddie Brown and AJ Green and some of those first round guys. You had Tim McGee in there, who we've had on this show. He's great guy, great player. Look at the 2nd round: Chad, Darnay Scott, Carl Pickens. 3rd round: Mo Sanu. I mentioned Hushmanzada in the 7th. Marvin Jones, was he a 6th or 5th round? I think fifth round.
5th.
I always get him and Aloka mixed up because they both had like immense value for where they were picked. The Bengals know how to get wide receivers out of the draft and deep into the draft and have them contribute. I mentioned the other 2 3rd rounders, Henry and Washington, and a slew of others. So they kind of know what they're doing, at least with this position group. And so this is a guy for sure. I think that's a good pick, John. Again, maybe not superstardom, especially in 2024, but a guy where you go, man, this is just a nice piece in the offense, and a guy who just reliable, knows what he's doing, and gets you a timely catch when you need it. And that timely catch may be a touchdown.
All right.
I am going to go on I think I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. So this player had a tale of 2 seasons last year. The first 8 games, you could argue there were some metrics where he was playing some of the best ball in his position group of a number of different players. And then the latter part of the year totally fell off a cliff. And because he was a rookie last year, that can be a little bit predictable. And so I think in some ways, that DJ Turner is due for a nice bounce back year. The Bengals have shown the willingness to bring him back and not bring in Newton could be a nice player at corner. That was a day 3 guy, but they have shown the willingness to stick with Turner, at least in some kind of high profile role. Now that gets muddied a little bit, right? With Hill. So we have to kind of see what that is, but the speed's there and different elements are there. I think that he could have, not a superstar type of season or that sort of thing. You look back, John, this was a guy who what was it, DVOA, right? According to Aaron Schatz, he was tops, and we're talking in mid late October. He was up there in DVOA playing pretty well. So I think there's still, I mean, he was second round pick. They like him. There's stuff there. They got to figure out that mix between what they're going to do there. But I think this is a guy, again, they didn't get super high profile draft pick to come in and supplant him, showing that they're not giving up on him. And so I think that this could be a guy that probably could make a nice step next year.
He fascinates me extremely because it's to a point now where he's competing with Dax Hill, who's never played boundary outside cornerback in his career. He was a high school safety who was a slot quarterback in college, and now was a safety in the NFL. So with Turner, who's been a cornerback for pretty much his entire career, if he doesn't win that battle, if it's truly like a even 50-50, whoever gets it battle, if he doesn't win that, he's going to be viewed as big of a bust as people viewed Dax Hill last year. And that's scary for him. But I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to beat out Dax because, again, he's just more natural at the position. And he did have like you said, he did have an extremely promising start. He obviously has the athleticism to mirror any receiver in the league. It's always been the physical stature that was going to be the question for him. It's why when he was drafted, people were wondering, is this guy going to be in the slot at 5'10", 180 with 30 and a half inch arms? He doesn't have the length or the physicality to match up against like true X receivers in those situations. But again, like I look at last year and how exposed the cornerbacks were because of lackluster safety play, and getting better safety play behind these guys. You know, Cam Taylor-Britt is talented enough to make do on his own, but I think that really hurt DJ Turner as the year kind of went on and they experienced more and more trouble back there. And even still, like there were a lot of reps last year where he was in great position. He was right in the hip pocket on some of these receivers, and his lack of length unfortunately came back to bite him, and he couldn't get his hand on some of those passes, and really tightly contested coverages on some of those reps ended up being not just receptions, but big receptions, because when you're that close and you can't make a play on the ball, your ability to recover and then make the stop is very minimal at that point. So there were signs last year that showed potentially the limited upside of DJ Turner, but I think just having a better overall and sound secondary around him will allow the Bengals to kind of play off coverage a little bit more with him. And I think that's where he can shine because, again, his closing speed is second to none. He's a 4.2 player who obviously doesn't have a ton of weight on him, so it's not like he's going to slow down anytime soon. And him just gaining all of that experience last year definitely helps. So it's like if he wins the starting battle, it's like that's expected. It's just whatever comes afterwards. Can he build off of what he did to the start of last year? And that's going to be huge because, like you said, they barely did anything else at the position to really prove it.
So a couple things. First, the unfortunate thing is this is a little bit of a double-edged sword with DJ Turner. If it doesn't work out and he fizzles out, that's a second-round pick that, that's a premium pick, right? And if it doesn't work out at a premium position, especially in today's NFL, that's not great. On the flip side, if it works out, great. But what does that tell you about Dax Hill and his future with the team? Does that mean that's a fizzle out and a first-round pick, albeit one that's very late, is in question? I don't know. So this may be a good news, bad news situation here regarding DJ Turner. I will say this. You touched on it, and that was going to be my second point. The improvements in the safety, the veteran leadership and savviness, the additional year of experience from Jordan Battle, all of that, I think, will make the lives of many defenders a lot easier, but the young cornerbacks much, much easier this year. And maybe I'm being overly optimistic in thinking that, but we saw, and granted, he did some things on his own well too, but we saw some of the best play we have ever seen from Eli Apple, a former first round, kind of fizzle out a little bit, come back and have a nice career renaissance with the Bengals. And I think a good part of that is because there was so much leadership, so much football IQ behind him and Bates and Bell. And so the hope is that as well as the Bengals are trying to recreate things up front and in the interior with the defensive line, the hope is that they are, kind of trying to recreate some of that stuff at the safety position as well, in bringing back some of that leadership, that knowledge, and setting guys up to be successful. And hopefully Turner, Hill too, but hopefully Turner is in that position and benefits from the safety group.
They've really just invested so many like high priced assets in the secondary in recent years. And if only Cam Taylor-Britt is like the lone like true hit there, that's going to be viewed as a failure. And the process, I think, was sound because you want to invest early draft picks in cornerbacks because it's such a valuable position. But like, I think they need Turner to at least pan out as like a capable starter. And again, I think he's got the potential to do that. But this year is really important because cornerback, I think it's a position that's tough for rookies, but historically, like the best cornerback seasons have come from players who are particularly young, like on the younger side of 25, 26 years old. So getting quality seasons out of that position early on in your rookie contract is extremely valuable because I think diminishing marginal returns are pretty strong at that position. So they need to see something. They need to see a full season of stability and consistency from Turner. And again, I think he's got the capability to do that because athleticism and just I think he's even more like I think he's got more to do or more to show as a run defender too, but I think he can do that as well because that's what he did kind of more at Michigan. And I think that's yet to be kind of seen here in Cincinnati. But again, the more comfortability that he gets, the more confidence that he has of the guys behind him, I think he can get to that point for sure.
So those will kick off our 2024 Bengals potential breakout candidates. We always like to do this as the workouts kind of commence and summertime is here. So we thought, why the heck not? Let's do it. And those are the first two. So we had Yoshi and we had DJ Turner. So I like that. All right, let's drop the mic and get out of here. We've been here almost an hour. Can't even believe it. What do you got for us, John, on our way out?
If you've been watching on YouTube, you kind of have been seeing my eyes dart to the sides because my cat, I believe, is chasing a fly at the moment, and it's been the case for like 20 minutes. So I'm gonna go help her out. So you take us to the outro, Anthony.
Okay, all right. You're gonna swat it. I don't know what you're gonna go do there.
I'll probably have I have a shoe. I don't think I have like an actual fly swatter, so I think I have a shoe on
newspaper shoe. Okay, all right, all right.
To that.
Okay, all right. Well, you have at that. I don't have much. It was just nice taking a stroll down memory lane with some of the names that we kicked around at the wide receiver group, and really, I mean, again, for the lack of success the Bengals have had in a number of different respects and for a long period of time, their track record with wide receivers goes way back. And, there's a lot of flash, a lot of sizzle there. It has paid off in a lot of different ways. But if you look at it, that is one position group the Bengals do not miss on very often especially when they draft them. And really, if you notice, they don't have to go after a lot of high profile free agent wide receivers. They're mostly supplemental players. They are mostly, stopgap players. I think, really one of the last major ones, Brandon LaFell, because they draft them and they draft them well. So and they draft them in a lot of different rounds. Good to see. We're going to do a little bit more of the remember him type of stuff. We used to do that a little while ago. So we'll start closing out shows that way. We have a lot of live viewers on this Friday evening across a number of different platforms, primarily Twitter /X, but a lot of different live viewers, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Thank you so much. Upwards of thousands, I think. So thank you so much for tuning in. However you may be tuning in, I appreciate it. Again, go back and subscribe to the Believe in Cincy podcast channel on the audio side. Keep it to our YouTube channel. Keep it to cincyjungle.com. Also, check out what my boy John, when he's not chasing flies with his cat, go see what all the great work he's doing at A to Z Sports. And then, of course, you can get the show on a variety of different platforms. So go do that. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a good weekend. And we will see you so soon with more to come. See ya.